All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit and then... So I just wanted to leave you with the word longing. I think the word longing is the most important word in the language right now. And it's a very un-American word. So one way to look at it is longing is always longing for the garden. An enclosed garden that you make yourself, which you don't make until you know something about boundaries or about not being eaten by the monster. So I'm going to read you one of the greatest poems in English on longing, and it's done by Gerald Manley Hopkins. And he speaks it in the words of a nun who is about to go into the cloister. I have desired to go where springs not fail, to fields where flies no sharp and shaded hail, and a few lilies grow. And I have asked to be where no storms come, where the green swell is in the havens dumb, and out of the swing of the sea. If you examine that poem, the sounds in it are absolutely astounding. I have desired to go where springs not fail, to fields where flies, did you hear the F's coming in? To fields where flies no sharp and sided hail, and a few lilies blow. Not a lot of them, just a few. And I have asked to be where no storms come, where the green swell is in the havens dumb, rhyming calm and dumb, and the green swell, and out of the swing of the sea. That's that feeling when you're finally out of the incredible chatter, monkey chatter. Yeah. So I just want you to think about the word longing. And then there's a longing for the father that has no name. It wasn't so much your father. The reason you can't find your father's bones, or you can't get your father back, is that that's not what you're longing for, really. And yet somehow it's contained inside the idea of the father. So you need a lot of work with the one thing that everyone was studying in Czechoslovakia was the old Middle Ages Jewish Arab thing, in which there are three worlds. There's this physical world, which is a world of objects, and it's fine, it's a good place to live. And above that is the world of the stars. You enter that world by number. Pythagoras lived in that world. And above the world of the stars is another world, where the archangels live, and the great spirits and the great gods. The great gods. And you enter that world by sound. You used to enter through the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And around 1260 and so, the people working in the Kabbalah began to call angels down from that sphere. And that was an unbelievable excitement going on in around 1550 and so on. People were actually able to call angels down and ask them what is going on. What's going on in the universe? So therefore, somehow you had to be able to imagine your father in all those three realms. You imagine him in the physical realm, that's good. Then you imagine him in the world of the stars, which is also the world of the planets, and it's a world of astrology and all of that stuff. And then you got to imagine him in the world above. So I'll read you this poem that I started the other day. One night a man was crying, Allah, Allah, Allah. His lips grew sweet with the praising, till a cynic said, so, I've heard you calling out. Have you ever gotten any response? The man had no answer to that. And he quit praying and fell into a confused sleep. And he dreamed he saw Keter, the guide of souls, who always appears in green, in a thick green foliage. And Keter said, why did you stop praising? Because I never heard anything back. Keter said, this longing you express is the return message. The grief you cry out from draws you toward union. Your pure sadness that wants help is the secret cup. So everybody argues over what the grail is. The answer is your pure sadness that wants help is the grail. Listen to the moan of a dog for its master. That whining is the connection. There are love dogs no one knows the names of. Give your life to be one of those. Huh? That's Coleman. That's Coleman's version to Rumi. I'm going to read you a couple of poems from this last book. The moose, you want the moose, all right. Horses go on eating the Apostle Island ferns, also sheep and goats, also the big nostril. This is a little concerto in the key of nostriled, an apostle. Horses go on eating the Apostle Island ferns, also sheep and goats, also the big nostriled moose, who knocks down the common bushes in his longing for earthly pleasure. They start moving towards they smell a moose cow, and the fucking trees are falling all over the place. Also the big nostriled moose who knocks down the common bushes in his longing for earthly pleasure. The moose's great cock floats in the lily pads. That image calms us. His nose calms us. Slowly, obstinately, we retrieve the pleasures the fathers, the church fathers, angry with the Gnostics, threw away. So one good thing has happened in this century is there has been some retrieval of sexual joys that people didn't want. All right, I'll give you a couple of these poems. It's called Poems I started when I was about 29 years old and I didn't have the ability to produce the images that I needed for it. But the image, the idea is of not caring. What does it mean not to care? So here's the first one. What does it mean to live as those before have lived? A field of boisterous men and women who lift, singing and shouting and dancing, a sheaf of wheat up to the sun. And then David, I put a hero of mine in each poem. Here's David from the Bible. When David danced for joy, we guess he did not care. When David played the song of degrees on his lute, when he cried, "My bones cry out from the depths," then we know he did not care. For not to care is this: to love the orphans and the fatherless, to dance as we sink into the badger's grief, to let the resonating box of the body sound, not to ask to be loved. Not to ask to be loved. Not to ask to be loved. And that came from when Mark Yates made it at the end of his life. I hope I never get so old that I ask to be loved. Wonderful. To let the resonating box of the body sound, that's his whole work with chanting and ritual. All right, here's another one. When have we had enough? This has got Jonah in it, my favorite buddy. Yeah. But his earlier life was a little different, and there's a detail here about that. He went outside of one of those Mesopotamian cities and tried to call him back to something serious. And there was only one gourd there to shade him in that incredible sun. Mm-hmm. And he was praying to God all the time, and a worm came and, bit the stem, and the gourd fell over. Just a little gift from God. When have we had enough? When have we had enough? When we can turn our head, say no to that dog-headed, furry-nosed, anus-eyed beast of duty. When we say no to the dog-headed, furry-nosed, anus-eyed beast of duty, give payback to God. Friends, remember, no one can see his own ears. When Jonah sat shaded by the spindly leaves of a gourd, hot in the desert sun, he didn't care, nor did the worm who that night chewed the stalk so that the gourd fell. For not to care is this: to love the sunlight as it falls on the table. to leap out of misery once or twice like a great fish before falling back into the ocean. For not to care is this, to love the sunlight as it falls on the table. That's as far as I could go when I was 29 with that stanza. The only thing I could get was the sunlight falling on the table. And then later I got this one. To leap out of misery once or twice, like a great fish, before falling back into the ocean. So that's all right. Here's one called Vincentine, and when my wife and I give readings sometimes, talks, and she sometimes chooses a story about a woman who had this trouble and that trouble and this trouble, and some terrible nurse got a hold of her and took her out in the ocean on a ship, and then at the right moment threw her overboard, and a whale swallowed her. And that's a little different with women, and my wife says, well, that's really important. That's really important. To get swallowed by a whale, you don't have to do dishes for a long while. And she says, every woman needs this. No husband, no children, just the inside of the whale. It's great. A man bends over the gunwales, gazes into the sea hour after hour, sees a lion rising upward. If he looks to the sky, he sees a dark egg perfectly visible in the crow's stickly nest. Wow. So I had that image of the looking down and seeing the lion come up. But then I didn't have the complementary image. If he looks at the sky, he sees a dark egg, perfectly visible, in the crow's stickly nest. When the terrible nurse took Vincentine by the waist and threw her into the ocean, a whale poured her into his copious throat, and there she lived without husband or children. What does it matter? Suffering or not, bad parents or good parents, luck or none. This is sort of a Hillman point of view. Sick of everybody whining about their fucking childhood. What does it matter, suffering or not? Bad parents or good parents, luck or none. Let us agree to climb the trunk of the crow's tree and steal the black egg from his nest. Hey. So, let us agree to climb the trunk of the crow's tree and steal. Why, there's that stealing in there again.
Yeah, it's the
and
same
steal
thing.
the black
Same
egg
thing.
from his nest.
A remarkable thing.
Isn't it? I never thought of it.
It's all they
We
do.
got to have Lou Hyde come earlier and
Yeah,
more.
that's right. Stay later.
Which book is that from, Robert?
That's from this book, Meditations on the Insatiable Soul, which you'll find in the bookstore.
Where can we get that?
I have special
Oh,
copies for
there's
$15. All right. So I really wanted to do that thing there. And this with stealing. Are you stealing anything from any other cultures? Translating. Are you stealing anything from the other gender? It's important to steal things from women. So when you steal genuinely from the other gender, you're stealing tenderness. And you're stealing whatever they really love. What they have to give. Women have this fantastic amount to give. And if we are in a polarity situation, then we won't do it. So it's as if first you have to love deeply what the other polarity has. And then begin to steal some for yourself. Then another question, are you stealing from the lords of death? Are you stealing from the lords of death? And then you go down and play with them. I'm going to give you this poem I read the other night. And every time you write a poem about death, to a certain extent, it's a playing with death. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you? Disney doesn't play with death. It's Bambi all the way. I'll give you this little poem. I wrote it about 6 months ago. In late September, many voices tell you you will die. That leaf says it. That coolness. All of them are right. And our many souls, I think it's right. We don't have one soul, we have many. And our many souls, what can they do about it? Nothing. They're already part of the invisible. Our souls have been longing to go home anyway. It's time, they say. Come on, lock the door, let's go. That's a little playing. Can you feel it? It's a little playing with death. And our souls have been longing to go home anyway. It's time they say, come on, lock the door, let's go. But the body doesn't agree. Body doesn't agree. The body says, we buried a little iron ball under that tree. Let's go get it. So it's not a great poem, but it's a poem.
It's a good.
And it's one that I remember, so I know there's something in it. If I can't remember my poems, forget it. Forget it, I already forgot it. So the last thing I want to do is to read you one more poem, and then say this last thing. Are you learning ritual ways to say hello and to say goodbye? Are you learning ritual ways to give gratitude to God? The old one was this, thanks a lot, let's eat. You know, as a grace. Doesn't seem sufficient somehow. You know that grace? Thanks. Everybody eat. I mean, you know, I guess it isn't funny, but I thought it was funny. Anyway, but a ritual extends the time of speaking a long time. So there's more chance for your gratitude to get in, isn't that right? And having long, flowery language, it extends the time when you're feeling gratitude. Trouble with our prayers at dinner and so on is that they're too short. You know, we barely get started and it's over. And the great old Norwegian one is too short too, but it's in the name of Jesus we go to the board, and not a table because we were too poor to have tables. In the name of Jesus we go to the board to eat and drink according to his word. The good of it goes to us, and the honor of it goes to him. That's how we receive food in Jesus' name. It's a nice distinction there, you know. We get the vitamins, he gets the thanks. Yeah. So I'm just thinking about how wonderful that idea is. Do you know, are you learning any ritual ways of saying hello to people when you meet them? Instead of, hi, how's your day? Must be other ways. The old way, of course, was to kneel down and kiss their feet. Now they wear tennis shoes, and it isn't so much fun anymore. It's also true that one of the things that we should steal from women is their ability to sit down and simply talk about where they are right now. Not what we're going to do the rest of the day or anything like that. So it seems to me a ritual greeting when your wife or your sweetheart comes out is to, instead of saying, hi, how are you? I'm going to go check the telephone messages. And don't say that. Like you sit down and say, let me tell you something that really made me weep this week. That's a good way to say hello. So the last thing I want to do is read you this poem about my childhood. And I didn't know what it was about until the very last line, and you'll understand it very easily. A farm in western Minnesota. When you look at childhood, something looks back. The yellow rose bush Grandma planted near her door, the gravel beneath the thin bicycle tires, and the new legs pumping as we raced along. The roads invited us west. Only a mile from home, the land began to rise. And that's really true in western Minnesota, heads towards the Rockies. Wind came from the west and turned those wind chargers standing in the alfalfa field. We tried some. And one day 1,000 sheep, starving, arrived in cattle cars from Montana, almost free. We took 400. How thin they were. Some lived for years. But other beings were starving besides the sheep. You could feel it in the mailbox and in the way the hired men drank. Many rooms were cold at night. I didn't see many people read or embrace, and moments of eternity were hard to find. Last stanza. I remember the dead ewes that my father threw over the edge of the gravel pit. It was efficient. There was work to do, but no one learned to say goodbye. So it's so strange to see if someone had been there, we would have done a ceremony for those sheep when we threw them over the edge of the gravel pit. But what I took in is if I die, someone will throw me over the edge of the gravel pit. Isn't that right? That's what I took in. So the lack of a ritual means something tremendous So thank you for being so hospitable to me and allowing me to read you these poems. And you're ones that I'd love to read poems to. And I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to write a poem and then feel it sink into someone. Feel it sink in. Not that glazed face in the academies.